Welcome to the Sex After Kids podcast, a place for parents to come and learn together about the sometimes bumpy road back into the saddle of their sex life after adoption, birth, or joining a blended family. I'm your host, Sofia Ashley, certified sex educator and sex coach, mother and stepmother, and your totally TMI guide to becoming BFFs with your body and initiating easy and connected and confident, naked, sexy fun times. Here we are, one part science of sex, one part mindfulness magic, and one part straight up real talk to help you find the spark in yourself and your relationship after kids. I'm so glad you're here. Hello, Sex After Kids listeners. Sofia here. Just wanted to give you a little bit of an update as we have a special episode today. So if you have not heard, the Sex After Kids Summit, hosted by yours truly, will be happening next week, November 20th to 23rd. It's a free virtual summit for parents of all identities, all backgrounds, all the ways they came into parenthood. And whether you have not touched each other in 6 months or you're having the sexy time and you want to spice it up, there is a learning path for you. Over 4 days, we are going to talk about mindset. We are going to improve our relationship connection with our partner. We are going to understand our bodies better and learn some new techniques to spice things up in the bedroom and get more connected and landed in our bodies. You can head over to www.sexafterkids.com if you don't have your tickets yet. And if you're not available this week, but this sounds too juicy to pass up, you can also grab a Couple Goals VIP pass. They are $47 today if you grab the fast action bonus. So make sure you get in on that. There's replays of everything, lifetime access to everything, as well as $1,500 in bonuses. So like courses and handouts and meditations and materials from our amazing speakers. If that's still a bit too much for you today, or if you just want to help spread the love, if you get 5 of your friends to sign up for the summit, then I will gift you a Couple Goals VIP pass. So all you need to do is sign up for the summit, get 5 of your friends to sign up for the summit, send me the name of those 5 friends at sophia@thehappyvaginaproject.com. And once I confirm that they have registered, I will get you your free Couple Goals VIP pass. So what that all means for the podcast is that today I'm sharing a special bonus interview that I did with Helen Rowlands. She is a holistic pleasure coach working out of Australia, and she is in her 60s. She's been married for 45 years, and she is more in love with her partner than ever and enjoying the best sex of her life in her 60s. And I just thought it was too good to pass up to share with you all a glimpse into what your future could look like when you invest in listening to this podcast, hanging out in my world, hanging out in the summit, and just learning about your sex life and investing time in making it what you want it to be. So grab a listen. It's a little bit longer than usual. I hope you enjoy it just as much as I did. I'll be taking a couple weeks break after the summit just to recover and record some new episodes, but you should see some new stuff coming out before the holidays when I'll resume weekly episodes. Thank you so much for being here. I so appreciate you all, and we'll talk to you soon. Okay, welcome everybody to this very special bonus session that I have squeaked in with the lovely Helen, who's a holistic sex coach down in Australia. I'm going to apologize for my lighting. It is in the middle of the deep darkness here, and you may or may not hear my 3-year-old busy with trains in the background. But I just could not pass up the opportunity to talk to Helen about her 45-year relationship, because I think many of us here at the summit are in our first decade of our marriage or maybe a little bit longer. And so it's good to take some time to speak to people with a little bit more experience and perspective who can maybe share with us some of the highs and some of the lows that that we can look to our future, things that might be happening in our future. So anyways, all that to say, I just really wanted to take this opportunity, and Helen was game, which was lovely. Helen, let's just remind everybody a little bit about who you are and how you come to this work before we dive in.
Hi, Sophia. Thank you so much. I feel really delighted to be invited to be in this space, and I'm just so admiring of you for putting this summit together.
Thanks.
So yes, yeah, here I am with my Aussie accent. I live on the Gold Coast in Australia. I call my business Pleasure Waves, and I really just want everyone in the world to have way more access to pleasure. Uh, I do a combination of things. I'm an erotic blueprint coach, an accelerated evolution coach, and a Qigong teacher. And I bring all those elements into my coaching practice.
Awesome. Sounds like a really magical combination and very potent. And if you haven't caught, well, it's late, so we'll see how my language is today. But if you haven't caught Helen's session yet, you can learn more about the erotic blueprints in her session, all about them and how to embody them on day 2 of the summit. So I thought maybe we could just like take us back all the way to the beginning of your relationship and tell us a little bit about how you met your partner and what the early years kind of looked like for you as a couple.
Yeah, wow, it was really interesting going back thinking about this. It's a long time ago. We met at university. I was 19 years old and my husband was 21 years old. And so I want to preface this though to say that I have his full consent to talk about our sex life in my coaching business and in whatever context I'm working in. So I think that's an important bit to put in here, and that we are a heteronormative monogamous couple.
Mhm.
So yes, I met my lover when I was 19. He was 21. We were both studying at university. He was a couple of years ahead of me. And this person used to sit in a tree in the middle of the law courts at Melbourne University, and he would speak to people who were walking by. And he sort of knew me vaguely. So he started chatting away as I would walk past. And I was curious about this person who would sit in a tree and talk to people. So I climbed the tree and I sat up the tree and I started talking to this person. And what I was attracted to was that he was quirky, wild, and adventurous. So we had a friendship for a year, which developed into a love relationship. We were engaged for a year, and I was married at the tender age of 21.
Wow.
Yeah. So the early years, we fought constantly. We had a very unhappy sex life. No one would have put any money on us surviving as a couple.
Hmm.
Yes, and so the thing that set us apart was we had a commitment to grow and change. My lover particularly, I knew he was in it for the long haul and he was going to do the work to find the way through. So then we had 3 children. By the time I was 29, I was the mother of 3. For some
Nice.
crazy reason, I wanted to have my children in my 20s. I thought that was a thing to do. But when I look back, I was not very grown up um, at all, and didn't have a lot of life experience. So yeah, that was an interesting thing. So yeah, that's my background about how I met and what happened in the years following.
Hmm. I love how you say that, like those first, you know, those early years, there's a lot of fighting and bickering and you know, it didn't seem like there was an ideal match there in some ways. And I think I just love what you said about that commitment piece because I feel like, you know, as someone who's almost hitting 10 years together with my partner, married, I guess almost 8. And we met in my late 30s and I was like desperate to have kids and had wanted some since I was 25 and couldn't find the right person to do it with. Um, you know, we've seen divorces already, as I think most people do. And I mean, there's lots of different reasons that they happen. But I'm just so appreciative, like you said, with your partner, like my partner and I feel just have this commitment to doing our best to evolve with each other and continuing to work at the problem, or to find the solution, right? Like we both want to be together,
Yeah, yeah, and
in the
that's
long
so
haul.
vital. Yeah, it's totally vital to your success. Yeah,
Yeah.
we actually say we've had 4 relationships. 3 of them were lousy, and this last one that we're in now, the evolved one where we've done the work and we feel close to each other, is actually the one that we're really enjoying. Yeah,
And I love that concept too, right? Of like you're not just gonna have one marriage to this person, or be, in one relationship with this person. You're both gonna shift and change, and you're gonna have these different like eras in your relationship.
that's it.
Um,
Yeah.
so maybe you can tell us a little bit about like what will you say were some of the biggest things that shifted to get you to where you are now? Like what work did you invest in to be in the best relationship that you're in?
What work did we invest in? Well, early on, we went to marriage counseling. Early on, we did all those traditional sorts of things that you do. And, we just struggled through. We just hung in there. We individually did things. We went off to counselors and all sorts of things. But I think the biggest needle mover was finding the erotic blueprints. And
Mm,
through that, learning a whole range of new skills that we had never encountered before. Yeah, so it took us from, an incredibly painful and complex relationship to a place where we could learn to communicate, and we could learn different ways of unwinding, of just pulling back from those difficult things that were happening for us. So yes, to me, that's a pivotal point in our life about 8 years ago when we came across Jaya and the erotic blueprints. That was the needle mover. Yeah.
mm. That's so interesting, and I love, I mean, I've watched your presentation on the blueprints and like this notion of the different styles or like blueprints and understanding that, which means understanding people's needs and wants and desires on a better level. I would imagine both in and out of the bedroom, and maybe you can talk a
Exactly.
little bit about that. And then I also loved what you spoke to about the stages or the states, right? And understanding like where people are in an evolution of their sexuality. I mean, that's interesting to me that sort of, so finding the erotic blueprints and investing in your sex life has led to you being in the best version of your relationship as a whole. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that really helped through our blueprint inquiry was that we expanded our definition of sex. So in blueprint language, I'm an energetic and essential. I feel all of the energies and I love anything to do with the senses. And my lover is primarily asexual. And so he's just straightforward about sex. And so, some people would say we're a mismatch, but Jaya says there's no such thing as incompatibility. There's only lack of understanding.
Okay.
And so, yeah, as I've owned more fully who I am, and as he's owned more fully who we are, we've been able to find ways to come together and meet together. So this expanded definition of what sex is has been really, really helpful, because a sexual can have a definition of sex which is in a heteronormative relationship as penis in vagina, you know, and that was not working for me. That was not what my needs were. My nervous system needed to be calm and regulated, and a whole lot of stuff needs to go into creating the situation where I can feel relaxed and safe enough to have a sexual encounter or an erotic
Mhm.
encounter. And it's the opposite for a sexual, like they're good to go. And, I use this advisedly, but they can need sex to be able to relax.
Yes.
If they're coming from the sexual perspective, there's a lot of tension that builds for a person who's asexual. And I think I talk about how over time my husband has learned to express where he's at in his cycle. He used to just work so hard to cover it up, to hide it. And I just think, why is he angry? Why is he edgy? What's going on here?
Mm.
You know, and it was actually that he was just so sexually wired, so, you know, intensely in desire for that sort of release, but not knowing how to navigate that. Yeah, so that's been a big learning.
Yeah, that is so beautifully put because I mean there's a couple layers there. The biggest one I'm taking away at the end, and it's interesting, like I also have a fair amount of consent to talk about my sex life. And you know, my partner, we haven't done the blueprints, but my partner will often joke like when we're getting kind of tense with each other, he'll be like, I think we just need to bone and like work it out a little. And I have a sense just from talking to you, I'm probably a little bit more on the energetic and sensual side myself.
Yes,
And so that doesn't always appeal to me, even on a like intellectual level. But I think also what you're speaking to is like the levels of shame that we can all have, but that like a sexual blueprint in particular, and often, but not always men, where like, because there's this taboo around this, because you get caught in this cycle of like me turning you down and you asking, um, you start to like cut back that part of yourself, or you start to feel bad about wanting what you want or needing what you need. And instead of being able to like express it in a healthy way, you either take what you need in unhealthy ways or you cut it off, and then there creates this kind of disconnection and chasm, right?
exactly.
Um,
Yeah, yeah,
so there
yeah.
has to be space for both of you to go, this is what I need, and for the other person to go, well, I can't give you quite that, but I could maybe give you this. Or if you give me this, then I can give you that, right?
Exactly. This whole
Um,
conversation piece is so important, Sophia. Yeah,
yeah, and without that vocabulary, you're just stuck, right?
exactly. Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah,
interesting. That's
exactly.
juicy. Tell me a little bit. You were saying one of the things that you kind of wanted to touch on was that you had a bit of a sexual awakening in your 40s and 50s. Is this tied to the blueprints piece or separate from that? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, there is some parts of that. In my 40s, I knew nothing about the blueprints, but we were reading and learning, and we had got to a point where we could, in our love life, have extended time of lovemaking. So my husband was able to last longer. He'd learned some really amazing ejaculation control, and we were working with edging. So there was a time in my 40s when we had a weekend away, and we just were both in the zone, and we spent the whole weekend just making love. And
Mm,
it's become one of my favorite practices, is to get to that 90% of arousal and not to go over the edge, to be able to stay in there. That's my favorite type of sex.
mm, mhm,
Be able to stay in that blissful zone. I think that's something that energetics really enjoy, you know. So we had that in my 40s was the first time I experienced something like that. It wasn't just you know, wham bam, thank you, ma'am. It was like we were able to start engaging in some extended play together. And so in terms of our relationship, that was a very exciting time. And then the next awakening that I had was actually in my 60s.
love
So my 50s, I suffered from all sorts of other things that were going on in my life. So my 60s is when, just around about my early 60s is when I found Jaya, and I did a deep dive into expanding into my sensual and expanding into my energetic. Like 18 months of essential expansion. I'm 5 years into expanding my energetic. And as part of that, I engaged in 100 days of self-pleasure.
awesome.
Now
I've
this
done a
is,
week. I've done a
yes,
mini week challenge. So like, oh
okay,
my God, that's my new goal.
yeah. So I want to put a caveat here because I think you need a coach to work with something like this because this is a massive, massive expansion of your nervous system. So I did 30 days and then I did 60 days and then I got to 70 days and I did the 100 days. It took me 150 days to do 100 days. I had to give myself rest days in there, but I documented for myself 100 days of self-pleasure. And I'll tell you what, it was a fast track to awakening. It was really quite an incredible experience. But I got to really experience the capacity of my body. I got to experience springgasms. I got to experience all sorts of gasms. I won't go into all of them, but I just learned to play my own instrument in a way that I hadn't. I was a virgin when I got married at 21. And had gone into having children very early on, had those unhappy years in my relationship. I had grown up in a very religious environment and there were lots of taboos. So I, really just didn't know my own body. So it's never too late.
I mean, I think that's so many women's stories. And like, certainly for me, I spent most of my 20s, I'd say like at war with my vagina. I was constantly at the gyno with urinary tract infections and BV and whatever, and like didn't feel like I had ever had an orgasm or like knew what an orgasm was. And I felt so frustrated because I was like, is there such a thing even as like a soul touching, like, universe touching orgasm? And like, absolutely there is. But I love what you speak to about the nervous system capacity. Like, most of us are taught to like contract into pleasure instead of open up to it. And I mean,
Open.
that's a
Yeah,
strategy, right? But we got to
yeah,
open up to it, which has been game changer for me. I mean, my first
yes.
tantric masturbation session, which is like edging practice as well, which is literally just touching yourself for 20 minutes without going over the edge. Um, and I just felt like it was my first sensation of orgasm where I was like, oh, I just felt like someone dripped warm honey all over my body, you know? And it was still quite subtle. Like, I wouldn't say was like the most mind-blowing thing ever, but it was the first like real tangible experience I could say that
Yeah.
I had had of an orgasm, because up until then I always felt like I could climb the mountain and then the rock would just roll back down the hill, right? I could never push it over
Yeah,
the edge. And
yeah.
it's because your body's going, that there is something terrifying on the other side of that, right?
Yes,
um
yeah.
and I think, I mean, it's interesting. I'm curious. Well, so first thing I'm hearing, and I think that's important for people to take away is like, and we haven't talked about this a lot at the summit, is that self-pleasure is a really big part of the ingredient for the kind of sex that we're talking about here. You got to know how to play yourself well, and your partner does too.
Yes.
And not just in the watch porn and like blow a load kind of way. Like, this is about curiosity within your own body to the sensations and the energy and the things that are happening. Um,
Yes.
but I guess I'm curious. So you spoke kind of in your 40s and then in your 60s when you explored with Jaya, like, was engaging, what was it like to have conversations with your partner about your sex life? Was it challenging to talk about? Was he game to read the books and explore? Like, what was that process like for you?
Oh, okay. So over the years, he was the one doing the reading. He read all the Tantra books. He read everything that he could get his hands on,
Hmm.
because he wanted to solve the puzzle, but our communication still wasn't there. And I think things flipped when I found Jaya and I actually committed to learning and changing.
Mm.
And yes, so communication's a really, really tricky piece. We really didn't communicate well about sex and sexual desires. We just didn't communicate well at all. And I think that that's been a really big part of us learning to be successful as a couple. So one of the things I teach now in my coaching is a dyad process. It's called the power of two. It's the Greek word for two, apparently. And it's a way in which you can have a communication. It looks like a conversation, but it's actually, the whole goal is that you complete communication cycles. So a question gets asked. So in our case, we've done this one several times. Tell me something about you and sex. And then you zip your mouth and the other person gets to speak for as long as they want to. And the only thing the person that gave the prompt is allowed to say is thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Not to engage with them, not to question anything, not to argue with anything. You just listen and then you swap sides. So that opened the gateway for us. Now, that's not the beginning dyad. Don't start with that one. Don't start with tell me something about you and sex. There's a whole process that we go through to get to there. But we've done that one 6, 8 times. We spend an hour talking backwards and forwards, and we haven't got to the bottom of that.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's something in like, and even just that, even if you used a really innocuous question, like, tell me about your day, right? Like if we were just look at practicing communication skills and using that practice, it's a way
And
of
like,
offering that validation
yes,
without interruption, without advice giving, like all the things. It's like a really awesome communication skill to just listen to what your partner has to say without responding in any way.
that,
That's huge. Yeah. And then when you add some really juicy questions, you get to a whole other
yeah, they
level.
come a bit further down the track when you've got the actual skill of doing it. Because
Hmm.
I'm a fiery person and I would jump in and I wouldn't let him finish his sentences and he wasn't letting me finish the things that I wanted to say. And so we were just at loggerheads all the time. We weren't actually getting to a point of agreement.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, in that process too, like in the dyads that I've been in, gives the person who's speaking like long enough. I mean, as most people can probably tell, I'm a verbal processor. But like a lot of that is like you just even talking to yourself, like someone giving you the space to like hear yourself think about something. And oftentimes some puzzle pieces will come together for you in the way that journaling can, but just like saying it out loud can do.
yeah,
Um, Interesting. Well, and so what I'm kind of hearing in that, and you did describe your partner as like the curious, adventuresome, like wild type. So I'm not surprised he was the one reading the Tantra books. Um, but what I'm hearing in the what had happened in a bit with the blueprints was it sounds like there was a modality you could both sink your teeth into, a commitment from both of you to dive into that and explore it, or to support each other in exploring it. And I think one of the biggest things that comes from that is just like a common vocabulary. Like we now have words to talk about these things, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think one of the things that sold me on the blueprints, I took the quiz. It was an early version of the quiz many, many years ago, and it described me. It described me as an energetic and it described me as essential. And it was like all these ahas came in, and I didn't need to pretend to be something else any longer. I didn't need to be the cultural stereotype. Jaya acknowledged that there's a type like me. And a person who is sensitive to the energies, and that there's a way of moving forward from that space. So yes, I just jumped straight in. I remember, I took the quiz and I was doing lots of courses. I was really in a place where I was seeking information and I was just spending a fortune on different things. And I took that quiz and that's immediately started changing in the way I related to my partner right
Mm.
from that point in time. And he came to me and he said, whatever that thing is, you can do it. And he just gave me blanket permission to spend however much money I needed to buy the course, to get involved, to do it even further and deeper. I thought that was hilarious.
That's totally hilarious. It's like whatever you're doing, it's working, so do more of it.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'm mindful of time. I don't want to keep everybody forever, but I guess yeah, if there was any pieces of advice you had to offer to yourself in your 20s and 30s when you were living through those challenging and, busy times with little kiddos, like what would you offer to that early version of yourself?
Okay. Yeah. So what I would offer is that it's vital to plan time away from your children. Two types of time, one solo time and the other is with your partner. But if you can plan quarterly child-free weekends, we did it low budget. You can say we can't afford it, we can't afford the time. You can't afford not to do this. You actually need to get it in your diary, and no matter what happens, you commit to that weekend and time away. We've gone camping in a tent because we couldn't afford to pay, for accommodation. We stayed in youth hostels. We've done all sorts of things just so that we could get away and have that time, that clear time. Another really important piece is to take family matters out of the bedroom at
Mm-hmm.
intimate times. So one of the most useful things that we've done is to schedule a weekly planning meeting. We start
Okay.
our meeting with celebrations and then challenges, and then we do some calendar planning, and we create the times that we're going to commit to spend with each other. They get prioritized in the calendar in the next week, the next few weeks, our holidays together. And then we talk about tasks that need to be done around the home. We got this idea from this amazing couple, Gay and Katie Hendricks, who wrote this book. They wrote a seminal book called Conscious Loving, and then decades later, they wrote this book, Conscious Loving Ever After. And that has set us up so beautifully. So we actually share our calendars too. And because my work's confidential, I'm managing my Google Calendar to make it so that my husband sees that I'm busy, but he doesn't see any details.
Yeah.
And that sharing of the calendar has just made life so much easier, so much simpler. Yeah, we don't step on each other's toes with double booking and those sorts of things. So yes, the last thing is find role models. We didn't have any role models in either of our families. And this couple, Gay and Katie Hendricks, they're probably close to 10 years older than we are. And we've followed them through. We've watched them as they've developed a most amazing relationship. So we worked hard to find mentors, and then we've got Jaya and Ian now who have been mentors on a whole another level. So yeah,
Mm.
find mentors or role models or a coach.
I I love that. I think that's probably my favorite. Like all that advice is so useful. Um, it's really easy to convince ourselves we don't have time. And it's just I liken it to putting the oxygen mask on your marriage, and like you will be a better parent if you put the oxygen mask on your marriage, and you'll be better in your marriage if you put the oxygen mask on yourself. And scheduling, oh gosh, we could do a whole thing on that. But the role model piece, like, because how many of us grew up in homes where our parents, A, were still together, especially if you're of my generation. My parents split when I was like 10-ish. Um, so A, how many of us even have examples of people who've been married for a long time? My in-laws have been married about as long as you, I think. So I have a little bit of that. Um, but then, like, how many of us, even if we have parents who've been together that long, have we ever seen them kiss?
Yeah,
Do we
yeah,
see them
yeah.
cuddle on the couch? Do we have conversations with them like this about their relationship, or do they just bicker and
Yeah.
barely make it together, you know? So I guess it's kind of like that notion of like the five people that you surround yourself with or that you hang out with the most are a reflection of like where you're going to go. And I guess likewise, like the couples you spend time with and the older couples, the intergenerational couples that um that model what life and love and relationships can look like, that's what you have to look forward to. So
Yeah,
I love
yeah,
that notion.
yes.
So
It actually took us a long time to find people. You know, we searched and searched and searched. We thought there've got to be people who have created what we want to create. So don't despair if they don't just pop up or suddenly in your life. We've never met Gay and Katie, but we've watched them often on seminars, and they were doing a lot of podcasty things 10 years ago or so, and we listened to them a lot, but they've written amazing books too, so we just stalked them really. And
totally.
yeah, it worked. And like you, my parents divorced just about the time that I got married, but they've been in a very acrimonious relationship. And so, my husband and I say that we're unique.
Hmm.
We've been married 45 years and we're happy.
Yeah. Yes. And like not just like tolerating each other happy, like well woven grooves, like you're just my
Yes.
habit happy. Like we are
Yeah. No,
joyfully crafting a relationship we feel
yeah.
good in happy.
Exactly. I have never been more in love with my husband than I am now.
Yeah. I love that. And I mean, I think the biggest thing for me and why I wanted to talk to you a little bit more is just like, if you are in this for the long haul, if you did put a ring on it, like I didn't really believe in marriage or like think marriage was that important until I decided to. And then when I
Yes.
went through the ceremony, and I mean, this could take us on a whole other thing about rites of passage and how we don't do them anymore. It was like, yeah, we stood up and made a commitment in front of our community, and like this means something for us different than being common law, right? And I mean, we could have had a ceremony without signing the paperwork, but gosh, now I've lost my train of thought because that's what I do to myself. um, it's gone. Oh, just this idea that like we're here for the long haul. I want to be where you're at. I want the love to grow in my relationship, and I think the main thing I want to leave people with is like it is possible. You are
Oh,
living proof that it's possible. Your role models are living proof that it's possible. There is better things to come if
yes.
we invest in them.
If
So
we
yeah,
invest in them, yeah.
yeah.
It doesn't just happen. It requires work. It requires really finding the best teachings, the best guidance that you can. But yeah, it's totally possible.
And masturbating for 100 days. No, I can't.
No, I self-pleasured, not I
Sorry.
apologize. Yeah, because my business is pleasure waves. So, it was a
Yes, I love it. Okay.
pleasure of just going into those waves and allowing my body just to
Mm.
really fully
I
open and
have a new life goal. Thank you
yeah,
so much, Helen. I really appreciate you taking some extra time to offer your words of wisdom. I will link your website and everything below so people can find you if they want to work with you. And yeah, we'll see everyone at the rest of the summit.
excellent. Thank you so much, Sophia.
This is the part where we do the end bit, right? Okay, friends, let's take a mindfulness minute here. One big deep breath in through the nose and one big deep full body sigh out the mouth. Voila. Your nervous system says merci. Thanks so much for being here today. I hope your head and your heart have something new to consider. No husbands were harmed in the making of this podcast, and a big thank you to my husband for his sound help and original music compositions. Love you, babe. You can catch us on Instagram at The Happy Bee Project for tools, tips, and anecdotes. You can join the newsletter for weekly-ish dispatches from my bedroom and head to thehappyvaginaproject.com to learn how you can work with me. Catch you next time.